So good morning, everybody. My name is Russ Fitzpatrick. I have put together this series of trainings known as AnnieMac Works in an effort to help our real estate partners increase their income. We've been doing this now for 6 years. We've got about 31,000 real estate agents that have attended trainings. Over 90,000 modules have been completed by real estate agent, including our staging designation. We offer a customer referral, repeat referral training called our Customer First Professional Designation, and maybe our most popular event that we do 4 times a year is our Shark Feeding Associate Level Accountability. But for today, we're going to focus on how to convert ad, sign, and internet inquiries. You might want to jot down the domain name myworkssuite.com. That's going to be a place where you can go and sign up for a free account with AnnieMac Works. They sponsor the entire thing. And it is very, very relevant to lead generation and lead harvesting. There's a workbook down in the text chat on the bottom. If you're attending online during our on-demand library, you can always go to the toolbox to the right and download your workbook. It's free of charge. The workbook is comprehensive and follows along with the class, so hopefully you'll take the time to do it. We can't do anything nationally without the support of the AnnieMac Nation and the entire Worksaholic Army. Excuse me. AnnieMac Works has been the exclusive 50-state sponsor of the Works program and supports real estate brokers and agents all over the country. If you haven't yet done it, like us on Facebook at AnnieMac Works and consider joining the National Flagship Brokers Program if you happen to be a broker online today. You know, we've got a top 10 list, a top 10 faucet for buyer leads in 2015, 16, and 17. We think that open houses still rank in the top 10 to capture buyers. Point to NLS, Zillow, Trulia, Craigslist. Realtor.com kind of moves up and down the list depending on how much you spend on it, to tell you the truth. Same with Google AdWords. I think Google AdWords, pay-per-click advertising, is the certainly the foremost internet strategy that realtors across the country are employing. Farming, geographic and demographic farming, is still, to this day, the best source of leads that you can develop in your local market, because when you're known as the local professional, you will get word of mouth referrals and relationships. Past customers and sphere of influence is ranked number 2. And your own online strategy, which includes your own personal IDX lead generation website, that can be provided for you free from charge from AnnieMac Home Mortgage. Your own mobile apps, HD mobile apps, text, lead, autoresponders, QR codes, everything that you do as a real estate agent, individual effort. Your own personal online strategy on Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, with HD mobile apps, with Facebook apps, with buying your own click words for your own farm, and all those things that individual agents do is the number 1 source of buyer inquiries right now in today's market. Today we're going to talk about lead generation, lead capture, lead harvesting, lead conversion, and we're going to be moving into what to do once you get a buyer. You know, I'm steadfast. I'm on a soapbox screaming from the top of the rafters that you need to get them in a conference room before you take them out and show them houses. If you interviewed 100 of the top realtors in the country, literally the people that are earning over $1 million a year in residential real estate, you know, in today's real estate market, they would all tell you the same thing. Stop taking buyers out and showing houses. Showing houses is not what you should do for a living. Qualifying the wants and needs, hopes, timelines, finances, interacting with the consumer about the schools and the synagogue or the malls and the sports complexes and the subdivisions and the deals that are out there in the marketplace in a conference room, spreading everything out in one place so they can say, you know what, this is the best real estate agent in the marketplace. That's what the top 100 agents would tell you if you sat them down. But lead generation, lead harvesting, lead capture, and lead conversion, we're going to talk about that today and the buyer side presentation. Check out WebMax. It's paid for entirely by AnnieMac Home Mortgage, and it is truly an IDX lead generation platform for you as an individual agent. But there's a million of them now. I might have you take out a pen and write down these as they come off the top of my mind. Market Leader, Tiger Leads, Boomtown Leads, Conversion with a K-O-N, Conversion, Selectrified, Torch X. I mean, there are literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of vendors that focus on lead generation, lead capture, and lead harvesting. Make sure you check with your local board of realty before spending any money, because more often than not, if you're on a budget, the IDX real estate websites that have IDX built in, some of them are provided by your board of realty, and some of them are provided by AnnieMac Home Mortgage, like WebMax. So check that out. I want to define 3 sectors of this process, and maybe by the end of this conversation, you're going to see why I feel so strongly about conference rooms, Starbucks, in-home consultations, and actually becoming a consultant and advisor rather than a chauffeur or a gopher. The first section on the far left is lead gen. Lead gen can be defined as any activity in the residential real estate business, whether online or in person, that creates an inquiry. You know, an inquiry could come from your past customer sphere of influence marketing, your farm area, Google AdWords, pay-per-click. It could come from your contract with Realtor.com or Zillow or Trulia, and certainly it could come from open houses. But lead generation in itself is valuable, but for me, lead harvesting becomes very, very important in this particular real estate market. And the reason why lead harvesting is different than lead generation is because you might have a faucet flowing of 10 inquiries a day. If you're a good real estate agent in a good market and you're willing to put a little bit of effort in, you might get 5, 7, 10, 15 buyer inquiries a day. You know, it's not unusual if you have 20, 25, 30 listings and you have a good internet strategy to see more than 300 buyer leads in a month. That's not unusual. In fact, it's pretty reasonable in today's real estate market. But if you're having an average of 150, 200, 250, 300 buyer inquiries a month, here's what happens to most real estate agents in most markets. They don't have the time, they don't have the inclination, they don't have the resources, and they certainly don't have the desire to follow up on that many buyers. So you end up losing, you take the cream off the top, or what you perceive to be the cream off the top. The ones that are more forthcoming with financial information, the ones that are more forthcoming with working with you. And then you leave what ends up being 100, 150, 250 buyers on the sidelines, and you never talk to them again. So for my dollars in residential real estate in this marketplace, lead harvesting has become the infinitely more valuable commodity than lead generation. Now, let's trump them all. How do you define lead conversion? See, lead generation, lead harvesting. Lead harvesting means that you're feeding that consumer what's called targeted, repetitious feed from the MLS on basically what they're looking at, and retargeting them on their Facebook page, retargeting them on their Twitter account, retargeting them whenever they're shopping online, that they're seeing your MLS feed, they're seeing your logo, they're seeing your face, they're seeing your phone number. You're retargeting them. Yeah, have you noticed that when you shop for a Callaway driver, that Callaway driver starts popping up everywhere you're shopping? When you shop to go to Paris, all of a sudden all the Paris vendors are all over your web. That's called retargeting. And retargeting with an MLS feed is called lead harvesting. It means you're harvesting those leads that you've already generated. Now, lead conversion can be defined as voice-to-voice contact. Voice-to-voice contact. Lead conversion must be defined as eyeball-to-eyeball contact, belly button to belly button sales. Now, let's say I was a handicapper for an upcoming race, and I had to bet on which of these agents would close the most buyers over the course of the next 90 days. One of them has incredible lead gen. One of them has incredible lead harvesting. And the last one has incredible voice-to-voice, eyeball-to-eyeball, belly-to-belly, belly button to belly button lead conversion techniques. Which one am I going to bet on? Which one would you bet on? Well, I'll tell you, I would throw all the technology in the garbage. I would throw away lead harvesting, I'd throw away lead gen. Because if I can get a human being that operates at a high efficiency of voice-to-voice lead conversion, if I can get a human being, a licensed active real estate agent, that operates like a professor in the conference room, once they have a buyer in the room, then I'm going to bet on that person every single day of the week. If you were to draw a huge line in the sand between chauffeurs and gophers versus consultants and advisors, what you would find is that the chauffeurs and gophers in residential real estate take buyers out for weeks and months. The chauffeurs and gophers have low income. They're making $25,000, $35,000, $45,000, $55,000 a year because they're wasting their time writing multiple offers. I finally got an offer. Yeah, but they wrote $285 on a $319. You're pathetic. That's never going to go to a deal. Their buyers are writing lowball offers after they've looked at 20 houses. They're showing property over and over and over again to the same families. They're called chauffeurs and gophers. Where all the way on the right-hand side, the correct side of the line in the sand, you have consultants and advisors. These are the real estate agents in your office that show property fewer times per month, but are earning more money. These folks have serious showings where they might only go see 3 or 4 during a day rather than 9. They have more serious showings because they have more loyal consumers. Their consumers don't shop with multiple realtors. They write full price offers or 97, 98, 99% offers. They don't write 80, 90, 92% offers. Sense of urgency. Their consumers are checkbook in hand, in the car with them, driving to these places and coming back to the conference room and writing offers. Their buyers are highly qualified. They're not trying to fit round pegs into square holes. The agents that are in the consultant and advisor side have higher income. They're making $100, $120, $150, $200,000 a year working buyers because they're working them more efficiently. They're working them with them more closely, and they show buyers houses for weeks, maximum, and days sometimes. Just a couple of days they're out showing property. Where you're out there, some of us are out there showing property week after week after week. If you're going to define a couple of characteristics of the consultant and advisors, number one is fully pre-qualified with the lending partner, their own in-house lending partner, before they ever take the buyer out. And if they get a pre-qual letter from another lender, they're still going to go above and beyond and say, listen, let my guy shop rate. Let my guy compete for the business. You could still use your other lender, but at least I'll have the confidence that I know my guy can get this deal closed. And that's the kind of confidence I need to have to tell my sellers. It'll take you about 5 minutes on the phone, and it would be a good use of your time. When a wife says to you that the husband's busy and he's working, most consultants and advisors are going to attempt with great vigor to convince that wife that she should wait until 5:30 so the husband can come with us, or that we should wait for the weekend, or that I can give you a list and you could go drive by, but until both of you are together, we don't want to go into these houses because then your husband's not going to have seen all the things that you've seen. And vice versa. It could be the husband thinking he's going to shop without the wife. But both decision makers together. And I know that it's not always 100% possible, but you're going to attempt it every time. Conference room meeting. Not, hey, I'll meet you at the house. Not, let's spread out the stuff at the kitchen counter in a house that's not even ours. Of course, that's reasonable. A vacant house, a foreclosure, you've got the time, you've got the thing. Maybe there's no air conditioning, maybe there's no copiers, maybe there's no equipment. There's not the tools that you need to have the real meeting that you should be having. But if I had to choose between showing property 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in a row, or stopping at the first house and spreading out all the information and talking about it before we go into the next houses, I would take the kitchen counter above it. And buyer side presentations and agreements. That's the other characteristic of consultants and advisors. On Monday we talked about your objective, and stop making our objective to show property. Let's make our objective to have a meeting in the home with the consumer that hasn't yet listed their house. Let's make a secondary goal to meet in the conference room and line in the sand, see. If they're not willing to get pre-qualified with my in-house lender, I'm going to have a really hard time justifying spending $4 a gallon. Well, it's down to $3 a gallon now, but you get the idea. On Monday, we talked about goals and what our goals were. I think 4 and 5 really spread out a series of agendas that you should be forthcoming with in order to be able to close what we call guru status. On Monday, we talked a lot about rules of thumb in financing, and it's clearly spelled out in the workbook that you're well within your expertise to ballpark what down payments and closing costs would be. Always defer to your lending partner for the final good faith estimate or the final options as far as the financing they qualify for. But knowing the rules of thumb and being able to ask a consumer, if you don't have $9,000 cash to your pocket available right now, then there's really no sense taking them out and showing them houses, because you need about $9,000 if you're going to buy FHA. On Monday, we talked about going on a one-way trip towards the subject property that they called on with enthusiasm, with conviction, being proactive and giving them more information than you think that they called about, and then taking them on that one-way journey to the subject property. But then no matter what, once you're in voice-to-voice contact with the consumer, you ran through all the information about the subject property. Now, no matter what they say, meaning specifically if they say to you, no, I want to see that house. That's the only house I want to see. I really am interested in seeing that house, the 4-3 with the 2-car garage that you just talked about. That's the one I want to see. Well, if they're that emphatic, which they never are, but if they were, I might concede and say, listen, I've got a foreclosure around the corner for 205. I've got a deal that just came back on the market for 209. And if you want to see both of them, we could do all three at the same time. No, I only want to see that one. I'm going to be curious as to why. I'm not going to be obnoxious, but I'm going to say, can I ask you, why wouldn't you want to see the foreclosure for 205 and the other one for 209? Well, because we've already seen them with another agent, and now you get the truth. Truth is a good thing to have, isn't it? So no matter what, I'm going to do the bump to process. I'm going to tell them about some other unique properties that just came up. I'm going to tell them about the bank foreclosure. I'm going to tell them about the vacant house that's approved short sale. I'm going to tell them about the one on the corner that's a knockout. And then I'm going to set the hook. Once I've told them about those things, even if they wanted to go out and see these houses, I'm going to say, listen, one thing is for certain about the residential real estate market right now, and that's that the best deals move very, very fast. Can I ask you a couple of questions about your home shopping experience and what your plans are so that we know what your goals are and what you're trying to do? if a consumer is standoffish and arrogant and not wanting to talk to me, then I'm going to probably just defer and refer them out to another consumer. But if the consumer becomes forthcoming and talkative and engaging, then I'm going to really qualify him over the phone and really set the hook. Have you been shopping long? When were you hoping to move into your new home? Would you like to see a couple of these homes this afternoon or tomorrow, or would the weekend be better? When do you have time that you and your spouse can go out for some times? Where do you live now? I have a couple of other places that I think you like. Would you like me to do some research? And since you live in Sunrise and you have not listed your home yet, listen closely. I could drop off some of the information to you. Because now, if I'm becoming a guest in their home and they haven't yet listed their Sunrise townhouse, then I've got an opportunity to shift the focus to the listing of their home rather than just take them out showing houses. You know that if they haven't sold their house yet, it's highly unlikely that they're going to buy something. So, well, listen, I have about 20 homes that I think you'll be surprised by. I always say this to buyers on the phone. I run the probate cases, the foreclosure cases. I cooperate with all the bank relocations, corporate relocations and divorces at least a couple times a week. Come by my office. Let's put together a comprehensive package, and then we'll go out and see those 3 homes. How does that sound? Now, the buyer almost always says yes, but as you're reeling him in, you have all these additional qualifying questions, thought-provoking, thoughtful catalysts for conversation. And these truly are the building blocks of your buyer side presentation. There could never be one buyer side presentation that you do for every buyer because you need the building blocks of their considerations in order to build it. So download the workbook, print the workbook off, and start to refer to these types of qualifying and, building blocks to the presentation, the things that they want, need, desire, hope for, their timelines. And ultimately, we're moving into presentation here just a second, but we always need to be very cognizant, very conscious of the value of our own time. And it's not always a good idea. It certainly is not a good idea for you to invest time with a consumer that is not interested in pre-qualifying for a mortgage, that is not interested in being forthcoming with their wants and needs and desires. They're not open to dialogue. They're not willing to come by to sit down and talk, even for security purposes, to get a copy of their driver's license or a reason to come to a conference room or meet at Starbucks before we go out, especially in today's world, to go out and show a vacant house in a suburb when you don't have any identification. Let's respect our profession. Let's not respect ourselves. And let's say to the consumer, that's not how it works, sir. That's just not how it works. Our sellers require ID. Our sellers require pre-qualification. Our contract with our sellers require that we make sure that the buyer is ready, willing, and able to purchase a home before we intrude on their living space. So I need the opportunity to, now you can go down the street to the lady in the gold jacket and she'll send you through. No problem, but that's not how we do things. So draw a line in the sand that you won't cross and say, I will not work with a buyer unless X, Y, or Z. I can't define your X, Y, and Z because as you climb up the totem pole, as you climb up the food chain of residential real estate, and you go from being a buyer's agent to a listing agent, you go from being a listing agent to a high volume listing agent, you draw a further and further line in the sand of the buyers that you're willing to take out. Do you know what I mean by that? In other words, if you're new, you might take out every buyer that calls you. And then you get a little bit of swagger and you start saying, you know what? No, I'm only going to take buyers out that pre-qualify with Annie Mac. And then you get a little more swagger and you say, I'm not going to take out a buyer unless they pre-qualify for Annie Mac and come to my office to sit down with me for a presentation. And I'm not going to take buyers out if they don't pre-qualify a presentation, and I know where they live now and if they still have a house to sell. Whatever your line in the sands are going to be, I'm not going to say be concrete firm on them, but use them as a litmus test to decide whether you really want this buyer. So we give you a pretty comprehensive list of what to bring into the conference room, a full MLS investigation of the properties and subdivisions that may interest your buyer, and that means all of the houses that are within a certain price point that make up the houses that your consumer might be looking at. Sometimes in the conference room, you'll bring up a subdivision that hasn't been discussed yet, and the wife will go, "Oh my God, I remember that. I want to go see that." And if you didn't pull up those other subdivisions, then you didn't take the time to go over this big list, then maybe they said they forgot that they liked this other subdivision. They forgot that this other, community existed. Absolutely vital. PIT mortgage estimates on his price range, down payment and closing cost figures on the house in his price range. Set an appointment for your loan officer to be there in the conference room to pop in and visit at some point during the appointment, so he or she can introduce him or herself and shake the buyer's hand and say, "I'm really looking forward to working with you." Online, there's so many sources of schools, elementary, middle, high school, and private school information that you should have at your fingertips when the buyer comes in. Homeowners Association fees and services included. Being familiar with that, especially if your MLS doesn't list accurately a lot of times, you want to make sure that you note to yourself which ones you have full information on and which ones you don't. Does it include the water bill? Does it include trash? Does it include lawn? Does it include painting the exterior of the home in some cases? All of these vehicles for homeowners associations are powerful elixirs for decision making when you have accurate information. In other words, your PIT is going to be $1,840. Your homeowner station is $300 a month, but it does include your lawn, it includes your cable, it includes your this, that, and another thing. So you need to be aware of that. And if you're in a rural community that doesn't have homeowners association, I understand, but for many of us, homeowners association fees and what they include become part and parcel of the project. We have to have that information in our toolbox if we're going to be able to close this consumer for a decision. Gather some inspection brochures before your consumer comes in. Have a brochure or a flyer on your in-house attorney and explain how that in-house attorney relationship works, or how the attorney at the title company that you hold escrow can become a resource for them. Have a map to open and demonstrate location and value. Nothing more powerful for me in a conference room than circling certain subdivisions on the map before we head out and explaining to them, why these are the 4 most popular subdivisions for this price point. Don't be a U-turn geek and be lost everywhere you go. I mean, the technology is so realtor friendly in 2015, 16, and 17 that you should be able to get good directions to all the properties, even map them out. If you're going to show 4, 5, 6 houses in one setting, then for goodness sakes, map it out. Set them into your phone or set them into your GPS so you don't look like a buffoon. And select the properties that you will want to view. In other words, you're going to go over all this information, then you have these 4 that you've set up. Now, if they fall in love with another house, the neat thing that you can do is go ahead and while you're selecting properties that you've already picked, they pick another one, you can always set the showing instruction for that one on the go while you're out there showing them these others. The big suggestion, the big takeaway about this conference room meeting is, rather than take on a lot of buyers a little bit, the elite earners in residential real estate take on a few buyers all the way. So rather than play in the field with all the guys, why don't you just pick one and have a real relationship, rather than just buyers are a dime a dozen in this marketplace. Be selective. Be a consultant and an advisor, and take fewer buyers out, but commit fully with schools and homeowners association and gathering inspection brochures and setting an appointment with your loan officer, rather than just rush out to go show property with every consumer that calls you, go ahead and create that litmus test or that line in the sand. So we're going to go through. I stole the customer first presentation to open up dialogue. And these are talking points in the conference room. This is not necessarily a PowerPoint, guys. This is two warm bodies in your conference room that are seriously considering buying a home. And it's nice for you to say to them at the onset of the conversation that, look, you've got a lot of deciding to do. You've got a lot of searching to do. And ultimately, there's some negotiations that are going on. I want to talk to you for a few minutes about how I've become one of the top realtors in this community and what I'm willing to do above and beyond for you as your residential real estate agent. A lot of real estate agents think that searching for property is about turning around to this computer and going out and searching in the MLS. That's the multiple listing service. But there's a lot of sources for homes that are for sale that are not in the MLS. And if you drive down the street to the mom and pop real estate shop on the corner, the likelihood is that agent's going to turn to the MLS and give you the properties that are on the MLS. I've been doing this for almost 30 years. I work with bank-owned properties, foreclosures, probate cases when there's an estate that's liquidating an asset. Corporate relocation are sometimes the most motivated consumers because the corporation's going to buy out that house for them at a low price if they don't sell it. Approved short sales and unapproved short sales, knowing the difference and knowing which ones we're going to prioritize. Do you know that there's 50 divorce attorneys within 50 miles of here, and they all have first glance at the residential listings that are going to be coming on the market long before they're placed on the market? And certainly the for sale by owners sometimes represent some very good values. So what I'm going to recommend is that we stick to these talking points in the conference room. And of course you can jot them down. If you want, you can come back to this archive in our on-demand library and you can get the dialogue that top realtors use in the conference room. I want to just say this before we go into the talking points. I think the reason that rookie realtors and lower earning realtors don't want to invite people into a conference room is because they don't know what they would say when they got there. They're like, why are we even meeting? I should just take them to show them houses. But I can assure you the top 100 real estate agents in the country don't do that. They say things in the conference room like, our office is a HUD-approved brokerage. That means that we're entrusted to sell government-insured mortgages which have ended up in foreclosure. We've got a straight pipeline to those. We're approved to sell properties at auction, and our office cooperates with pre- and post-foreclosure auction opportunities, so you would get houses that are maybe never even hit the MLS, but they're available on auction. The big three services are Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and Chase. Together, they're responsible for liquidating almost 50% of all the default servicing in the country. We've sold homes for Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and Chase, and we will continue to do so. Therefore, we have a pre-inventory view. Divorces, probate cases, approved short sales, corporate relocation all represent avenues to identify exceptional value in today's real estate market. And the average real estate agent doesn't do that. I really pride myself on finding exceptional properties for my private clients, regardless if the source of those homes are unconventional. In other words, if it takes a little bit more work to discover a property that's exceptional value for my clients, I'm going to do that extra work. And it's important to me that you understand that most of the agents just shop in the MLS, and the best homes never make it to the MLS. Sometimes the best homes never make it to the MLS. Now, you might be rolling your eyes right now going, I don't have access to auction properties. Yes, you do. Go to auction.com. I don't have access to HUD homes. Yes, you do. Go to the HUDhomestore.com. I don't have access to foreclosure properties. Yes, you do. Homepath.com. Your county tax rolls tells you every probate case. I mean, you can go into a probate attorney in the local market and say, hey, do you mind, keeping my number? And if I check back with you via email on a regular basis, would you mind telling me what probate cases come on? If you're a divorce attorney in the area and you make a little farm of the 50 divorce attorneys, and you say, hey, if you ever have a property that needs to be sold, I'm very accessible. I can give you value estimates ahead of time, and I can give you the opportunity to sell the home at a deep discount if you need to. So there are sources for this. If you're not taking those sources, that's your choice. But having those talking points in a conference room are differentiators that most realtors don't do and the elite earners do. HometownLocator.com is a website that can map a subdivision or a county. And we used Fairfax, Virginia as the county for this conversation. But ultimately, when you go to the VA Hometown Locator or hometownlocator.com, you see that it breaks down all the townships, all the subdivisions, all the areas within that county. Do you see where it says subdivisions, neighborhoods, and settlements? These are the names that you should be very, very familiar with. On Monday, we said that you're like the general manager of a grocery store, and that those columns that are in front of you right now represent the items on the shelf in your grocery store. And if a consumer says to the general manager at a grocery store, hey, where are the paper towels? And he doesn't know where they are, he's not a good general manager, right? Well, if a consumer says, I want to spend between $260 and $300, and you don't know where to point them on this list, how can you ever expect to make high six figures? You didn't even take the time to understand your store. Gosh, if I had a 2x4, I would hit an agent upside the head with it. They're struggling feast to famine. They're paycheck to paycheck. They can't break 60 grand in commissions, and they can't understand why. But the agents that are making 150, 200, 300,000 know all the subdivisions, know all the names, know all the prices because they took the time to study it. On the VA Hometown Locator website, it lists which schools and the school ratings of those subdivisions. And now I want to just share the last nuance of the conversation with a buyer before I ask them to make a commitment to me as their professional real estate representative. I'm going to say, listen, most agents really believe that negotiations are just about price. And while price is going to be a huge piece of the contractual negotiations, sometimes we get burnt because we didn't negotiate as fiercely for the right inspection and repair clause. Or we lose a house because we didn't write in the right homeowners association clause so that the language that was written in didn't account for that huge assessment that's coming in. Or the elevation survey wasn't acknowledged that it's in a flood zone or it's below sea level or that it has a sinkhole, or that the closing costs weren't articulated exactly the right way in the contract so that you ended up getting stuck with $1,100 worth of fees that you shouldn't have, or that we didn't put in the proper appraisal clause. So we bought the house for $209 and the appraisal comes in at $204, but we didn't articulate in the contract what happens at that case, right? The condition of the house, unworkmanlike repairs. You've got a family that's done additions to their home over the last 30 years, and none of them were permanent and none of them were done properly, and you didn't write a clause for code violations or title defects. You're working with a realtor who's fresh out of real estate school, doesn't understand contractual negotiations, and thinks that if we get the house for $205 instead of $209, we did a good deal. Well, I'm here to share with you, and I wouldn't be this crass to my consumer, but I want you to know as a realtor that giving your agency, giving you as an agent that guru status on all of these nuanced negotiations differentiates you in the hearts and minds of your buyer, even if you don't believe it does. That's a key. Sell the salesperson first, and then that salesperson will be able to sell more effectively in the field. why don't you believe that your negotiations are valuable? And explain to that consumer how they're valuable. That's demonstrating value, and that's why I want them in the conference room. The very last thing we're going to talk about in the conference room is qualifying. And it's not about what you can afford. It's how much you want to pay. And understanding the mortgage market in today's real estate environment is more complex. There's different loan terms. There's fixed rate versus variable rate. There's closing costs. There's FHA, VA, USDA. There's home buyer grants. There's Hero Home Source rebates. There's your monthly payment. Then there's the total monthly payment, the principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, and the homeowners association. Are there premium payment penalties, grants, and down payment? Now, you don't have to go into all that complexity, but certainly explaining to the consumer that getting with the right mortgage professional and me together isn't just about how much you can afford. It's about how much you want to pay and knowing up front how much you're going to have to pay. See, my mortgage partner is going to break it down to the penny. And we're going to know within a few dollars of where we're going to be on closing date. And that's an important thing because I've been with other lenders where there's surprises, there's interest rate fluctuations, they didn't lock you in, the Fed's planning a rate hike down the road here, and you got stung with 1.5 points that you didn't expect to get stung with at closing. It's a very frustrating thing. So I use AnnieMac Home Mortgage's featured calculators to go through. So if I have this property for $230, I can quickly go to AnnieMac's website and punch in the figures and get the PITI estimates. If I do accurate information in, I get accurate information out. Simultaneously, I've got this house for $259. I want to show them. We put it in. The payment didn't change very much. Going from $239 to $259 doesn't change your payment very much, does it? So now we can have some arsenal when this stubborn little consumer is negotiating for $4,000. We can show them, you're really willing to walk away from this home for $17 a month? I don't know that might be the best decision. I want to just talk for a moment about multi-transaction buyers. On Monday, I talked about my own mother being a 6-month project for me. God rest her soul. She passed away about 5 years ago. But she was a stickler for the fact that she didn't want to sell her home first and then buy a home. She wanted to buy a home first and sell her home after because she hadn't moved in a long time and she didn't want to move and she really wanted to go shopping before she could buy a home. So because I was, intimate with my own parents, I knew that they were sincerely in need of a move. They were empty nesters and they really wanted to downsize. But I had to use the exact same strategies with my own mom as I had used with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of buyers over the last 30 years. And that was, let's get a good overview of what's available in the marketplace for our price point. Let's analyze what the highest possible price we're going to get for your home is. Let's compare the equity that we're going to be pulling out of your home and directly compare it to your PITI where you're going to land. So we've got $175,000 worth of equity. You're going to have a very small mortgage. It's going to cost you $640 a month when you get there. Do you feel how the juices start flowing? Wow, I'm going to go from $2,000 a month to $600 a month. That's what I'm talking about. The juices are flowing. Here's the types of houses you're going to buy. The juices are flowing. The juices are flowing. We're lubricating the friction in the mind of that consumer. And ultimately, after the presentation, after the ideas are shared, after the shared pool of meaning, as the Crucial Conversations book that I love so much says, after there's a shared pool of meaning in all the ideas that are on the table, then, only then, after you reach guru status with this consumer, after your credibility is high enough, then you can suggest, listen, I can take you out and show you 3 or 4 properties. But the houses that we're going to look at today are not going to be available 6 months from now after you've sold your home. The challenge that you're facing is that the houses that you're going to see, it's not financially responsible to go ahead and buy those houses while we still haven't sold our home, because you could end up losing tens of thousands of dollars. Not to mention, are they even qualified to do both? So you've got to, in 95% of the cases in American residential real estate, you're going to have to work with that buyer to convince them to trust you to come over to their existing home and discuss the concepts of multi-transaction real estate. In other words, the Associate Works upgrade program helps them move from a smaller home to a bigger home. The Associate Works empty nester program helps them move from a larger home to a smaller home. But there's a formal process that is the most efficient process for that. So if a buyer needs to sell their house too, and they've just invited you over for a chat, make sure you bring the full BPO or the full CMA. Bring a listing presentation package. And if you don't have a listing presentation, go to Chip's class, How to Build and Present a Bulletproof Listing Presentation. Have the ability to analyze their equity position and to compare that equity to their down payment and closing costs on their new home. Your listing book, upgrade program, empty nester program, if you don't know what those are, go back to the USP class that Chip teaches. The upgrade program and the empty nester program are all part of the listing presentation for Associate Works. And I'm going to end on for sale by owners. Obviously, if you've got a ready, willing, and able buyer to buy a home for a certain price range, it's incumbent upon you personally to go out and drive those neighborhoods and find those little red, white signs before they do, because you got to find them before they find them. Don't let your buyer bring you a property that they've already went and visited. You're going to lose $6,000, $8,000, $12,000. And also reluctantly eliminating properties, whittling away the subdivision choices that they're making, slowly deciding that house isn't for them, and testing their conviction as to why. And asking them, are you sure that you wouldn't consider a 4-bedroom home rather than a 5 if it had a den and a large family room? Are you sure that you wouldn't consider a home without a pool if it had a great big backyard? Are you sure? And then this is one of my favorite little tricks of the trade. I'm a Florida guy, so it gets a little warm down here in the summertime. But no matter where you are in the country, having a clean automobile, and so many realtors right now are so lazy, they're like, well, my buyer's only following me, I don't need to clean my car. But it's a credibility issue to have a clean car. If there's a child that's traveling with you to go see homes, bring a Sony, what they call it, a PlayStation or PS3 or whatever that's called, the little one, the handheld one, a Nintendo DS, even an iPad, if you own one, to bring for the kid, if he doesn't already have his own. If he's 10 or under, give him a coloring book and have questions in the coloring book about his new home and things to write that he wants in his new home. If there's a teenage daughter or an in-law or a son who's coming with him, respect that older child or in-law with their own clipboard with all the properties that they're going to see, because it's relevant that they're able to take notes on that house as well. And they may not use it, but they're going to know that you were thoughtful. Last but not least, love to open up my trunk and have a cooler full of bottled water in the trunk when I'm showing property, because it does get warm. And if you're a good realtor, you're going to spend 20, 30, 40 minutes at a house. If you picked out a house that they are making an emotional connection to, it's not unusual to spend 30 minutes at a house if there's an emotional connection to that house. So when you're done, opening the trunk and popping up the bottle of water is a nice flow for you as their professional real estate agent. It's my pleasure and privilege to run the AnnieMac Works program nationally. We appreciate your participation in this two-part series. It's vital that you attend Monday Mastermind and Wednesday Workshop because they kind of go together. And it's also an important upgrade to download your workbook. If you haven't yet done so, it's down in the text chat section of today's presentation. And if you're online in the on-demand library, go next door to your videos and you'll see a toolbox in the on-demand library, and there's plenty of tools in there. Big thank you to AnnieMac Home Mortgage. If you haven't reached out to an AnnieMac loan officer, mortgage loan originator, or branch manager yet, please do so and build a relationship with AnnieMac Home Mortgage for all your pre-qualification and loan applications. My name is Russ Fitzpatrick, and it is an honor to be a part of your career development and whatever level of leadership you entrust in us. We are off to the races, and we will see you Farming Fridays coming up soon. Thanks again.